And welcome to tonight's episode of Tenant Thursdays. My name is Alan Haley. I'm the Director of Development and Communications for Lawyers Committee for Better Housing, or LCBH. LCBH is a 40-year-old organization that provides services throughout Chicago and into other parts of Cook County. We provide free legal assistance and supportive services for renters facing unjust evictions and living in substandard housing. Tonight, our guest is LCBH's Director of Supportive Services, Jude Gonzalez. And Jude is here this evening to talk with us about the different rental assistance programs that are available to renters who are experiencing a COVID-19 related loss of income, to help them access resources to remain stably housed. So welcome to Tenant Thursdays, Jude.
Thanks, Alan. Pleasure to be here.
And to get started, Jude, I thought I would ask you if you would talk a bit about Lawyers Committee for Better Housing's model of combining legal assistance with supportive services. Could you tell us a bit about what your team does and how we integrate those two disciplines at LCBH?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that all legal aid organizations have, but we're lucky that this one does. In 2000, if I have my history correct, is when the executive director of LCBH at that time, who held an MSW and a JD, recognized that solving people's legal issues was one dimension of their lives. And if we were to look at this more holistically, there were underlying issues that perhaps legal was not prepared to deal with and would call for another set of professionals, and that would be social work. And so they added social work at that point to really take a look at underlying issues like unemployment or underemployment or childcare or benefit eligibility. A lot of folks might qualify for benefits and didn't know that, or maybe were denied benefits and didn't understand the course to appeal them, or needed the advocacy to make that happen. And so my team does a lot of that, and but we've morphed into doing something now that is a lot more salient in the environment that we are in now, and that is administering emergency rental assistance. And that started as a pilot program and has really turned into something that has changed the dynamics of our agency quite a bit, and really for good. I think it really helped solidify this notion of legal and social work coming together. So when we can provide emergency rental assistance, it means that our attorneys can go in with some leverage, right? They're not just asking based on their defenses, which could be absolutely legitimate ones about conditions or discrimination, but they are saying to folks like, can we settle this? What would it take? Especially when folks are just in trouble because they owe back rent, and that owing of back rent is because they're making decisions about whether they put food on the table or pay rent, or get a car repaired or pay rent, or pay some other credit card bill or pay rent. And so it gives our attorneys another point of leverage to be able to say, look, we can perhaps secure emergency rental assistance to pay off what this client owes in back rent, and will you waive the eviction or seal it, or still give them time to move out, or any of those things. So it's been really I think the aspirational model coming together, where social work and legal work side by side. And so we get direct referrals from 311 for emergency rental assistance, and a lot of times, while it could be solved in part with money, there is a need to have legal put their eyes on it and review it, and maybe even bring up issues that the tenant didn't know could be fought and could be remedied through legal recourse.
And before pre-COVID, and we know that there's circumstances in terms of ability to pay rent and how much back rent is owed has changed, but the LCBH data up through 2019 showed that many cases, the median amount of rent involved was sometimes mostly $2,500 or less. So as you said, we're talking about choices that are being made between paying for car repair or childcare or other things, tough decisions that families have to be made. But having rental assistance can be quite a savings in terms of the cost of a family being on the street and having to move, and dislocation, the bringing together of those resources with your team and legal assistance can be a real game changer.
It can be, and it has been that for sure. And just as you said, prior to the pandemic, things could be resolved with what was at that time really the cap, which was $2,500. And our data showed that things fell just below that. So we were setting out to accomplish a couple of things with the program. And one was to alleviate the court's burden, which was really overcrowding when court was in session, and there was morning and mid-morning and afternoon calls. They were packed. And so the idea was to give judges some resources that were readily available. And we had an office on the 13th floor of the Daly Center, so that a judge in eviction court might say to people, have you tried to resolve this? If it's just about back rent, just down the hall, you can find somebody who might be able to help you all out. And so alleviating the burden that the courts were feeling, providing some relief to landlords, because we do recognize that they're trying to pay their mortgages as well and keep their buildings. But we make no bones about the fact that we are tenant advocates, and the idea is to keep people stably housed, and as you said, not uproot people from their communities where they are important pieces to their network and social support and schooling. And that's what's at stake when there are forced moves, right? That sometimes kids have to uproot themselves, and then their social emotional development is hindered, perhaps.
So now we fast forward to today, and the demand for the services that you and your team are providing has just, I imagine, really, really mushroomed, and there are new rental assistance programs that are in place to help renters that are currently faced with real concerns about being able to pay rent. Could you elaborate a bit about what the different rental assistance programs are that are available to renters today?
Yeah, I absolutely can. And please bring me back to that. I wanted to answer one thing, if I forget. One thing that you brought up that I think is important. When Governor Pritzker took over as governor, he increased the amount of money that was available for the pot that we were dipping into to provide rental assistance, and it was a doubling of the amount. Right under Governor Rauner, we were always running short of that money, and there was promise that this was going to take us further. And even with that, and the pandemic is really the thing, right? Because people were out for much longer stretches of time, or needing to come back to us for a second round of assistance. That money, even when it was doubled, ended. And so we always certainly want to spend it down, but we would like it to take us from one fiscal year to the next, if possible, without an interruption. So at the moment, the state homelessness prevention funds have been depleted. They will be replenished July 1st. That's the fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th. But there is other money that has come through. IHDA will have money, and many of the rental assistance programs are following a similar model, meaning there's like an online portal. Anybody can go in, provided that they have the technology to get them there. But then there are community partner agencies like ourselves for folks who don't feel as technologically savvy and might need the assistance of someone walking them through that or scanning documents that they need to upload. So anybody who is a low to moderate income renter, city of Chicago or state of Illinois, there are different programs out there. Most of them across the board will launch in May. And that's an online application, but it is also possible, of course, to call 311 and get routed to a community partner agency like ours, and have the assistance of a case manager, someone on my team, actually walk them through what the process is and the actual uploading of documents or filling out of the form. And that's our job, to make sure that folks get everything in. Some of these programs are lottery based, meaning they will take in as many complete applications in the time that the window is open, and then after that they will make awards of money. Some of them differ by whether it's initiated by the landlord or the tenant, and then at least one of them offers the option of which is the most flexible one, where if a landlord, because it requires participation on both parties, right? The idea is that one will verify or confirm that this is the amount that's owed, or that they will accept the money, because landlords generally are the ones who are getting paid directly on behalf of the tenant who owes money. But if in the instance of a landlord who is unwilling to accept the money, or is difficult to reach, and we, through all our best efforts, we haven't been able to get a hold of her or him, then after a certain amount of time, that money can go directly to the tenant, and the tenant can then pay off the rent directly. So there's a website, I don't know if you shared it already, but it outlines the different programs. And I know that they all right now say scheduled to open in May, and that's the case. But as soon as they do open, that schedule to open in May should be replaced with a website that will take you to the portal, or give you instructions, again, to, like, say, call 311 or go to one of the community service centers.
So yes, thank you, Jude. I have posted that website. Are there documents that that folks who are watching tonight that may want to apply for some of these rental assistance funds that they will need when they apply?
Yeah, there are, and I'm sure that in other Tenant Thursday broadcasts, people have talked about, our attorneys have talked about the importance of documenting and saving everything that you get as communication from your landlord. Hopefully people are getting the idea that all the things related to your housing, really need to be in a file that you can reach back and reference pretty quickly. But a lease that either comes from the tenant or comes from the landlord is important. Something that documents the COVID-related crisis is important. A lot of times that is a letter of furlough or a separation letter, or even documentation that a company is closed, because sometimes smaller companies have closed and not had a chance to even put out on their letterhead that this is what's happening. So some documentation. Unemployment benefits letters certainly tell us that people have applied and maybe been granted unemployment benefits letters. Award letters from SSI or SSDI, and in some cases bank statements will suffice, right? When people are getting paid in a manner that doesn't produce pay stubs, right? So they can provide us bank statements that, if they go back far enough, show us a regular influx of money and then probably a very abrupt stop, and then a very small amount that people are trying to live on. So there's a number of ways in which it can be documented, but people should try to gather up all those things, because those are certainly the pieces that will be asked for.
Okay. And do you need to have an eviction notice to be able to apply?
You don't have to have an eviction notice. You can be behind on rent. A lot of times, because of the moratorium, there are landlords who are not providing eviction notices, but certainly people are behind in rent. And so a ledger that comes from the landlord, when either the tenant reaches out or we as advocates reach out on behalf of the tenant, will help to confirm what that amount is.
Okay. And how long should folks expect to wait after applying before they learn if assistance has been awarded or approved?
Yeah, so it varies by program. There are some portals that are promising at this stage, and they are probably up into the last minute when they launch in May, working on design and infrastructure. And so some of them have promised that people can go back with the unique identifier that they get when they start this process online to check status. In other cases, the agency that they're working with will be able to check status on it. And so in those cases, I don't know how long it will take. I will tell you that when we work with the state homelessness prevention funds, it has been about 10 business days. And so while we won't guarantee anything, because sometimes there's a huge influx of money, and at the moment we are waiting for a pot of money that needs to be spent down by June 30th. And so there's very likely going to be a huge rush of applications from the 10 partner agencies. We are one of them, who have access to this money to spend it down. We want to get into as many hands and resolve as many problems or issues that exist as possible. So sometimes that influx means that the senior fund managers who make the final review are inundated with a lot of applications to go through. They do trust us to, put together complete and accurate applications, and that helps them, right? Then they're just sort of checking off boxes and making sure that everything fits as it should, as opposed to like examining, in fine detail content of the situation.
So this is reminding me of a question that I don't think I asked at the beginning, is just who is eligible for the rental assistance program, the ones that are available now for persons impacted by COVID. Are there any other sort of eligibility criteria beyond showing some COVID impact that are factored into this?
Yeah, an agency that has access to any number of the programs will be able to determine in what sort of category people fit. Some of it is just for residents of City of Chicago. Some of them expand as far as Cook County, and then some of them are for the whole of the state. Generally, it is for arrears. It can be used. Some of the programs can provide rental assistance when people are moving out, and that would be first month's rent and security deposit, or first month's rent and move-in fee, not moving fees. So not trucks, not movers, not people who pack, but move-in fee, which is what a lot of landlords have sort of changed over to, rather than security deposits. But that's a harder one to sort of process. And so the ones that are what we call pay and stay, people would like to pay off what they owe and continue to stay in their place and be stably housed. Those are going to go infinitely quicker.
Okay. And so how is payment received if somebody is awarded rental assistance?
Mm-hmm. So again, varies by program, but I will tell you that like All Chicago, which will be administering some of the funds that come through IDA, Department of Housing, and the U.S. Treasury, will be using a third-party payer, Avid Exchange. And so going back to your question about what documents are needed, there are some documents that we need from landlords, a W-9, and this Avid Exchange form filled out. And that just really says how they would like to receive the money. Would they like a check to be cut to them, or would they like an electronic fund transfer? An electronic fund transfer is clearly the fastest way to get this money, but they'll specify what it is that they like, and provided that they fill it out correctly with their routing number and account number, then it'll go directly to them when it's approved.
Okay. Are there any resources available to somebody who is denied these funds?
Yeah, at least as we have worked with the state homelessness prevention funds, there is an appeal process. So sometimes people are denied because a narrative was incomplete, or it didn't make a very clear-cut case as to what it was. Some people certainly have crises other than COVID, and maybe that started before the pandemic. And so there's an appeal process, and they might be asked to provide additional documentation. Beyond that, I can't comment on what other programs may or may not have to remedy a denial.
Okay. Well, this has been very helpful and informative, Jude. Are there any other important takeaways for a renter who might be watching tonight, or someone from a community-based organization that might be hearing from their constituents that they're concerned about eviction?
Yeah, absolutely, Alan. You know, it again, hopefully has been something emphasized again and again on Tenant Thursdays, but reach out to LCBH for sure. You want an agency, if possible, that has both legal and social work, so that again there can be a legal review, because that's absolutely necessary. We don't want people to have paid off a back rent owed and still have plumbing that doesn't work, or windows that are cracked, or other conditions that should have been ameliorated and should have been leveraged before giving this landlord money. So if they can reach out to us, I think that would be good. If they can use Rentervention, which is on our website, that would be good. That will also help filter and channel people to the right place. And rest assured that if they get to us first, we will still send them to legal. And if they get to legal, they'll make a recommendation to get them to us. So again, that aspirational model of the two programs working together is really where it's at. And I'm not saying that other programs couldn't help them, but a lot of times we're finding that people have issues that could be resolved legally who may not have known that this was a violation of their rights.
And thank you for mentioning Rentervention. We've shared that link in the comments, and just reminding folks that we've talked about Rentervention on some of the previous episodes of Tenant Thursdays, and emphasizing the importance of providing a landlord with a COVID-19 related declaration form. While
Right.
That's something that landlords are supposed to provide before they would initiate an eviction, you can also get in front of that by going to rentervention.com. You can fill out one of those forms and email it directly to your landlord, so that he or she has that. And then Reintervention keeps a record that you've done that, that you've taken that affirmative step.
Right. Right. The only other thing that I would add, Ellen, of course, is something that I mentioned earlier. The more that you can save, the more that you can document and file away about the communication that you and your landlord have, the better off you're going to be. And the more that you are diligent about keeping your receipts, your lease, all in one place, I think it's going to go easier, whether you're looking strictly for legal assistance or if this issue can be remedied with just rental assistance. A renter being proactive at that time, and people who are watching who might be working with the constituency, that would be, I think, the thing that you want to emphasize to people is just like, make sure you keep all this communication. You don't have to have a file cabinet, but you do, want to keep it somewhere where it's all easily accessible.
Well, Jude, thank you for joining us tonight and for talking about how LCBH combines the disciplines of legal aid and supportive services to achieve stronger outcomes for our renter clients. It's great working with you, and we appreciate you being on tonight's show.
Yeah, not a problem, Alan. Thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to come back at any time to talk more about what we do.
Right. With that, have a good evening, everyone. Good night, Jude.
Good night, all.